Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Just take a deep breath. Exhale is always to relax more. And always I begin with love and gratitude. I wouldn't do it any other way. There's no resistance. In love and gratitude, it's the highest frequency. And the combination of love and gratitude, which is the absence of resistance, and connectedness to breath can bring us into flow state, which is our constant state of receiving, by the way. Beautiful. So it's been my privilege and my honor to speak here 4 or 5 or 6 times. And I always have a lot to talk about, just a matter of deciding, what will I talk about on that day and how can I compress that down to 20 minutes, right? That's always my challenge. So in my mind, I said, I know everybody has a hard time sleeping, right?
Yeah.
Like if I were to say to you, by the way, if I were to say to you, hi, how are you? People tend to use that as just a greeting and a salutation. Hi, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? Fine. And now we can tend to our business. But when I say, how are you? I really actually want the answer. And by the way, not even the short answer. I want the true answer, no matter how much time that takes. I could just as easily ask you a different question. If I wanted to know how you are, I could ask you, how are you sleeping? And on a side note, different talk for a different day, how are you pooping? Because of course you know, your sleep is primarily the indication of the inner realm. And then of course digestion is immune system, and so the two make a bit of a complete set in the picture of how are you in your life, right? How are you? How are you sleeping? How are you pooping? So today we're going to talk about how are you sleeping. Now, the first thing I want to tell you is this. This is a super big conversation that I am trying to compress. And on October 19th of 2023, I was a guest on a podcast called Deep into Sleep. Dr. Yishan Zhu. Dr. Yishan Zhu is a licensed clinical psychologist, board certified behavioral sleep specialist, and adjunct clinical faculty at Stanford School of Medicine. And when she saw my one sheet as a keynote podcast speaker, she sent in an inquiry. She said, would you be able to talk about how spirituality and sleep are connected? And I said, ooh, yes, I will. Yes, I can. And she had never had that conversation before. So this podcast is in full length in its entirety. It's on my website if you want to go listen to the entire talk, because I'm going to have to be super quick, trying to draw a blueprint for you. A blueprint that shows all of the connections and correlations between, by the way, the brain and the brainwave states, your breath and your nervous system, egoic constructs functioning in the linear illusion of time. Like there's just a lot of dots I'm about to connect when I give you 3 simple, but not easy exercises that you can do in the middle of the night. Oh, let's give you more than that. Let's do this. How many of you, show of hands please, have a hard time falling asleep to begin with? Yes, right? Do you have a hard time falling asleep? Do you feel like you lay there forever and you cannot go to sleep? Now, how many of you fall asleep? Fair enough. But then you wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning and then you can't go, exactly. You wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning and you can't go back to sleep, right? And then there's this other facet, and that is once you've had your night of sleep or sleeplessness, then in the morning you start to kind of re-emerge into a state of consciousness. So there are some practices in each of those moments, and I want to share some of those with you. Trying to fall asleep. Now, I have to tell you kind of how this is all connected and why it matters. First of all, your brainwave states. The wide awake and alert state is called the beta state. We're in it right now. We start to relax. By the way, take a nice deep breath. Exhale is to relax more. We're going into an alpha state. And then the deepest state of relaxation, where you're still just aware of yourself and that you're awake, that's called the theta state. That's the state of meditation. That's the state of quantum healing hypnosis, and so on and so on. That's the state that is equated to the right hemisphere of the brain, which is your connection to your divinity, in which, by the way, there is only pure time. There's no linear timeline. So again, as I start to just kind of refer to all these moving parts and show you how they all fit together, you can watch the extended version on that talk. It was very generous spaciousness to be able to go through all of that and see how they're all related. But for the sake of time, what I want to do is go right into some exercises that you can do. I want to give you some tools that you can use at night, whether you can't fall asleep, whether you've fallen asleep and you've woken up and now you can't go back to sleep, or even as you're coming to the surface in the morning. Okay? So the first one, I'm skipping all of this in the end. I'm skipping this in the interest of time. Yep, got it? Yeah, so that's the most important part of all of this, is that it's not even so much of a problem that you fall asleep at night, you wake up in the middle of the night, by the way, 3 or 4 in the morning typically, and then you can't go back to sleep. The problem is not that you've come into a theta state, the awakened state, or you're aware that you're moving toward being awake. The problem is actually your perception of it, your perception that that's a problem. So, for example, you fall asleep, you wake up 3 in the morning, and immediately your mind actually reacts to the thought, oh, God, I'm awake. Oh, I'm not going to be able to go back to sleep. And then you let your mind just run you. You let your mind get busy on the to-do list, reliving maybe an argument or an issue you've had with someone. You let the mind, by the way, go boom, boom, straight from, well, in this case, I'm going to say theta because you've already come into some realization that you're awake. So you're going straight from theta to beta. You're going straight from, oh, I was just sound asleep, to now I'm awake and active. And I want to tell you that by doing that, you've missed an opportunity for sure. So in the moment that you're trying to fall asleep, let's do that first. In the moment that you're trying to fall asleep, we're going to concentrate. Concentration facilitates meditation. Meditation facilitates transformation. And by the way, transformation facilitates liberation, right? But all of that happens in the theta state. Concentration, meditation. And what I'm actually going to ask you to concentrate on is your breath. So here's your first exercise. Take note of this. And you can try it now if you'd like. Sit upright with your spine in a straight position. Just relax otherwise. You can close your eyes or open them. And I want you first to just draw awareness to your breath. I want you to actually observe the breath. Don't try to guide it. Don't try to control it. Just observe it, pay attention to it. And as you start to observe the breath, I want you to assign a number value, a count to the inhale. So maybe you're inhaling for the count of 1, 2, 3, 4. And then assign the value, the count, to your exhale. Likely, your exhale is a shorter count, a lower number than the inhale. Your first job is to bring your breath into evenness. So if you're inhaling for a count of 4, then exhale for the same count of 4. And stay with that. Now, as you start to bring your mind into single point of focus, concentration, and what you're concentrating on is the breath, and now you've brought the breath into evenness, and now you'll elongate the count. So perhaps inhale for 4, exhale for 4 becomes inhale for 6, exhale for 6. Now, with time and practice, you can literally work your way to inhaling for a count of 30 and exhaling for a count of 30. Now, I know this because I do this every night. It has to be an ujjayi breath, which is in through the nose, through the throat, from the belly, like a diaphragmatic breath. And again, for a lengthier description of that, you can refer to the longer talk. Now, I do want to tell you first and foremost that by the time you get to 30, count of 30 on the inhale, count of 30 on the exhale, you'll be sound asleep. Because you've actually given the mind something to focus on. And by the way, and the focus is on the breath. And that is a magic formula. So we can use our breath to calm the central nervous system. And we can use the breath with a calm central nervous system to actually switch brainwave states from beta to theta. So this is a really important one. Oh, is that what you?
Yes.
There we are. Okay. Did you hear everything I already said? Okay, whoops. Okay, by the way, do you know who, if you're inhaling for 30 and you're exhaling for 30, that is one breath a minute. Do you know who takes one breath a minute? The desert tortoise. Do you know how long the desert tortoise lives?
Forever.
130 years. Yeah, we actually have one. I'm going to leave it in my will to David. Okay. Yeah, joking, not joking. Okay. This is the first one. And if you simply give your mind something to focus on, and the focus is on the breath, which is the bridge between the mind and the body, and you can therefore cultivate mastery of central nervous system, convert the brain wave states. In this case, you're probably going to pass even through theta and just fall asleep. So that's your first exercise on how to get to sleep when you have a hard time falling asleep. There's another. This one is very popular. You might have already heard of it. And it is just quite literally, good morning, welcome, come in. It is just quite literally through visualization. Because I've told you in other talks, I've told you previously, that the left hemisphere of the brain is very much associated with your egoic construct, connection to who you think you are. Let's put it that way. And it thinks in words, thinks, speaks, communicates in words. Remember that talk we had, letter, 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 word, 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 sentence, 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 paragraph, 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 page, 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 chapter, 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 book. That is in the left hemisphere. That's where the egoic construct resides. But remember, the right hemisphere of the brain, your connection to your divinity, only resides in pure time presence. And it doesn't think, speak, or communicate in words. It's more like images, intuition, feelings, and by the way, downloads. When you suddenly have this realization, picture says 1,000 words, right? That's all happening actually in the right hemisphere of the brain. And that's where theta state is, pure time presence. That's where it can only be. That's where you're connected to who you actually are in truth, which is an aspect of the creator in form, individuated through thought, form, and field. Okay, another one. Colors of the rainbow. Colors of the rainbow. Here we are. Okay, sit up, close your eyes, and just relax and take a breath. And if I said to you, can you see the color red? See the color red. I want you to stay with this. It's easy for some people. It's very challenging for some people. But I want you to work away at this until you see a solid color red. You can draw upon other images that are commonly red, like a red sports car, a red apple, a red rose. But see the color red and do not think of anything else until you purely see the color red. When you have it, you move to orange. see the color orange. Again, you can draw upon the actual piece of fruit, the orange. Draw upon anything you see as orange. Maybe the sunset. And stay with it until you see the color orange. Nice breath. And only once you have orange. Can you see the color yellow? Yellow flower, yellow sunshine. Okay. So the colors of the rainbow, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. This is your blueprint for visualization that will connect you to the right hemisphere of the brain, to who you are in truth, to pure time presence, and to a theta state. Okay, good. Let me tell you this. You can open your eyes if you're still doing the visualization. So take yourself through that. That's your exercise number 2 at night. So you can play, find your favorite one. Visualization, theta state. Why does theta state matter? Why am I trying so hard to get you to a theta state? Because actually, didn't I just say I was trying to get you to sleep? Theta's not sleep. Theta's just before sleep. So actually, I better talk about that. In the theta state, the meditative state, you have what I'm going to call you, and you at the table, right? The conscious mind, which is the egoic construct, the subconscious mind, which is really driving the bus, and the superconscious mind, which knows who you are in truth, what you are and how you serve. By the way, let's be real, my hand is up right now. How many of you have ever experienced self-sabotage in your life? Have you ever self-sabotaged? Have you ever tried to manifest something and then not let yourself have it? That's because when you have you, and you at the table, the conscious mind, the subconscious, and the superconscious, they're not all in agreement. That is what self-sabotage is made of. So I want you to start to understand the importance of the work that you can do, the opportunity that presents when you're in the theta state. Because you can get what I'm going to call you, and you at the table and have a good talking to. And by the way, the superconscious should always win. It knows who you're in truth as an aspect of the creator in form, lovable and worthy by divine birthright. Let that one sit at the head of the table. That's really important. So the theta state is where every aspect of your being, seen and unseen, resides. And we can do a lot of spiritual work in our lives in that moment. There's one more I want to tell you, and this one probably is my favorite, and this is still for trying to help yourself fall asleep. Oh yeah, here's why it matters. Because remember, the egoic construct abides in time as being a linear construct. Think of a number line in school, in math, goes from 0 to, infinity. And it all travels from left to right. That exists in the left hemisphere, the egoic construct. Now, and it always moves from left to right, which means it always moves from past to present, which means it always reactivates the past and projects it into the future, by the way, avoiding pure time presence, which is where who you are in truth resides, right? The ego tries very hard to block that. Now, most people, when they lay their body down at night, they recount the day, and they do it in this linear construct. I'm going to call it from left to right. So I'm also going to call it from past to future. So when most people lay their body down at night, they recount the day. They relive the day. So they say, okay, I woke up this morning, had the coffee, somebody came over, I didn't know they were coming, it messed up my morning, da-da-da-da-da. You kind of go through the day, relive the day, my eyes are shut. Go through the day, relive the day, and even if you had an uncomfortable encounter with someone, maybe you had a conversation and there was some discord in the conversation, and then you relive that, and then you refeel and reactivate all the feelings that were associated with it, and every single bit of this resides in the egoic construct where time is linear. So one hack is that you can actually do something, two things. You can do something to reverse the linear construct of time from past to future, which is basically reversing the hold of the egoic construct on your mind. Look how simple this is. Close your eyes and start counting slowly in reverse from 100 down to 1. Now, keep counting in your mind, but let me also tell you that the mind at first will try to resist this. It'll distract you. It'll skip counts. And by the way, if you skip count, you have to start over. So counting backwards from 100 down to 1 or 0 is a fantastic way to bring the mind into concentration. Remember, concentration facilitates meditation. Meditation facilitates transformation, which is ultimately your liberation from that egoic construct. Okay, so that's another one. Now, when you get really good at it, then you can count from 200 down to 0, 300 down to 0. Set your intention, right? Go big or go home. Set it to 500 down to 0. But you'll be asleep before you hit 0. Okay. There's another I want to tell you about, and it's in keeping with this counting down. This is one of the 112 tantric meditations. Tantra simply means technique for centering. And it actually doesn't even matter what you focus on, what you center on. It's the centering that is the technique of Tantra. And there's a tantric meditation called unwinding. Unwinding. It's the same concept, if you will, of counting down from 100 to 0. And it erases the emotional charge that we store in our tissues. So remember, I've talked to you before about the causal plane. It's actually who we are in truth. What presents as density of form is actually a belief of who we think we are. It happens to be overlaid with a precognitive agreement, which is what we've chosen to learn through limiting beliefs, agreements made in fear, all kinds of dynamics there on the causal field. The astral body is the body of feelings and emotions, which are always 100% in response to the thoughts and beliefs, and that's where that emotional charge comes from. So if you have this emotional charge, trigger, if you will, stored in you, it's because it's in response to a thought or belief. That's the actual source of it. Now, we can unwind and rewind. We can undo and erase these triggers that are stored in our tissues that are in response to a thought that we need to get to and change, right? So there's a practice called unwinding. Now, in this practice, instead of starting with, okay, I woke up this morning, and then moving all the way through the moment you lie in now, which is now I'm going to bed at night, you go backwards, you go in reverse. Okay, I'm lying in bed. And here's the caveat, by the way. You absolutely positively have to perceive this as an observer, as a witness, as a fly in the room, a fly on the wall, so that there is no emotional trigger. You're actually able to erase the emotional trigger. So if I say to myself, I'm lying my body down, getting ready to go to sleep, and now I'm practicing unwinding. Right before this, I was brushing my teeth. Think of any details of brushing the teeth, maybe looking at your face in the mirror, maybe thoughts that you had in that moment, and just before that, what were you doing then? And before that. Now, if you come upon a moment in reverse where you had a negative encounter with someone, your job is not to reactivate the trigger and start fighting the fight in your mind, because that's what the ego will try to get you to do. Your job is to be an observer and say, for example, okay, and then there's the woman in the room and she's having an argument with so-and-so. And then before that, really just no emotional engagement with reliving, re-encountering that conversation that you had, if that was the case. Now, this is like developing a muscle for the mind. This is hard work for the mind. The mind will try to distract you. The mind will try to shut down and go to sleep. The mind will try to whisk you away from pure time presence in every meditation, in every moment. That's why some people have a hard time meditating, right? Because it's a requirement that you sit in pure time presence, and that is the annihilation of the ego. So the ego fights to protect its survival, which can only reside in past and future. Okay, in the big long talk. So, rewinding, the ancient yogis and sages say that when you get really good at this, because remember, you can rewind, or I should tell you, you can rewind not just your day. When you're really good at this, you really sharpen the mental muscle of the mind. You can actually rewind the week, the month, the year, and you can go all the way back to like 3 years old, which is basically where everybody's cognitive agreement begins. Now, when you're really good at this, you can actually go to the years between 3 years old and birth. And with a continued dedicated practice of unwinding, you can actually go to the in-between, before this life and after the previous life, if this is your belief system. And once you can do that, you've actually unlocked every incarnation you've ever held. That's how the great yogis and sages do it. So you can relive every life in this eternal now, all at once, through this practice of unwinding. But you have to do it. You have to stick with it. That takes a little work.
Kim?
Yeah.
You have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. Okay, that's beautiful. I think that, so 2 minutes left, and thanks, because I didn't bring a card.
Sorry.
2 minutes left. I'll tell you that that's a fantastic amount of time to just say that by now you've definitely fallen asleep. By now, when you fall asleep and wake up, you can have a good talking to you, and you, just to get everyone on the same table, right? Get your life really dialed in, being really deliberate about the creation that is your life. And lastly, when you wake up in the morning, you're starting to become aware that you're coming up into a state of consciousness. Rather than hopping up and trying to get at it right away, I know we're so productivity driven, right? That's just programming. There's nothing more important than that moment where you're coming up into a state of consciousness. And I would start with a practice of gratitude. It's that talk that I gave before that I called Say Yes to Your Life. So we must have that somewhere on the website. And I like to start by saying yes and thank you. I like to start literally from yoga, from the ground up. I start with my feet. Just thank my feet and everything they've done for me, which is a lot. I like to thank my legs, knees, thighs, hips. I think a lot about my pelvis. I think a lot about my womb. I think a lot about actually, co-creating life, birthing life, just the gratitude I have for all that I am. I think of my heart, my breath, my lungs, everything. I expand that to the bed I'm in, to my partner in the bed with me, to the room I'm in, to the property that the house is on, to the community. And now we're just talking about how far can you expand your auric field, right? I actually can wrap my auric field, I can wrap my loving everything around the whole wide world. That takes a little practice also. Okay, so let's do this. Let's wrap it up. Here's what I told you. Thank you, I got it, Danny. Here's what I told you. And that is, there are a few things you can do to help you fall asleep at night. There are a few things you can do when you've fallen asleep and then you wake up and you can't go back to sleep. That's an opportunity. That's where the magic happens. Don't rush into an awakened state by reacting with your thoughts. That's an opportunity to get you and you at the table and change your life, literally. And then I give you tools for once you've slept all night and now you're waking up, how can you start the day right? So I hope you find these tools helpful. I'm available to you if you have any questions. It's my pleasure to be here. And Yucca Valley Center for Spiritual Living relies on your donations. And so please, let's help support. I support for sure. And to help this community grow, not just survive, but thrive. Thank you for being part of it. Thank you for listening today.